Good evening, my name is Dylan Vogel, and in this presentation I'm going to be focusing on two ways that the media obstructs women's representation in politics, as well as one way in which the media can serve as a powerful tool for increasing women's representation in politics. So the one way that the media obstructs women's representation by politics is by perpetuating gender stereotypes, or gender role expectations relating to traits. Fridkin and Kenney tell us that women and men are associated with communal and agentic traits, respectively. Communal traits having to do with concern for others and advocacy, so traits such as being sympathetic, being affectionate, and being emotional. Agentic traits are typically more assertive or controlling, so these are traits that are associated with things such as ambition, dominance, and independence. These are really the traits that are more often associated with leadership roles and with leadership positions. So in addition to the media focusing on men relating to agentic traits and tying females to communal traits, they also give men more media attention. They give them more headlines and they source them more often. So they're effectively really linking men to these leadership traits and perpetuating this cycle of men being associated with leadership roles. In fact, Fridkin and Kenney actually tell us that female senators more often take clear positions on issues and highlight their leadership credentials in their own messages. And the media focuses on these things less for them than their male counterparts, even though they focus on them more in their own messages. So these gender stereotypes in the media can really make it more difficult for women to exemplify that they are strong and competent leaders, which definitely hinders women's representation in politics. Another way that the media obstructs women's representation in politics is the way that they cover appearance and the amount of coverage dedicated to women's appearance in the media. I believe that it's important to consider the coverage of all women, not just politicians, as the view of women as a whole will affect how women in politics are really seen. In fact, in the film Misrepresentation, they note how from a very young age, boys and girls are being shown that no matter what else a woman does, no matter what else her achievements, the value really still depends on her looks and on her appearance. There's really no value on female intellectuals or brains over body. So this really affects how even the most powerful and influential in the women in the country are being seen, which can make it very difficult to be taken seriously as leaders. This is seen quite a lot in campaigns such as Sarah Palin and Hillary Clinton's campaigns when they were both competing at the same time. So this really negatively affected them. For Sarah Palin, on one end of the spectrum, she was being shown as almost too feminine. She was overly sexualized. She was talked about in very inappropriate ways by male reporters and journalists, and this really took away the focus from any leadership abilities that she had and any issues that she maybe wanted to focus on. On the other end of the spectrum, Clinton was shown as not feminine enough. She was really criticized almost no matter what she did. If she tried to be more feminine, she was trying too hard. If she dressed like she typically would, she was told that she was not feminine enough. They spoke about her sexuality, they spoke about her relationship with her husband, but they really took away the focus from the important issues and the messages that she was trying to get across. Dittmar also discusses this in her article in a section titled Style Over Substance, and she really discusses how the effects of these media portrayals can really have negative effects on the perceptions of women's seriousness and qualifications to lead. So it really affects how women are seen as leaders and their ability to be leaders, which can also negatively affect how women who haven't started running yet might see themselves as whether or not they're qualified to run. Now, while the media can definitely make things very difficult for women's representation, there's also a way that women and politicians in general actually can use the media to their own benefit. So social media can really be used to disseminate preferred issues and messages that they may not have been able to get out otherwise. So this is a way that they can connect directly to their constituents and connect directly to the public at large in a way that they really haven't ever been able to do before. Fridkin and Kenney tell us that female senators were actually using their press releases via social media to raise levels of awareness for important issues such as women's health, and other things that may be important to women but maybe aren't important to the public at large and may not be covered in mainstream media. This is also seen recently in real life. Back in February, Elizabeth Warren was reading a letter by Coretta Scott King and was debating points against the nomination of Jeff Sessions for Attorney General. Before she was able to complete her points in her debate, she was shut down and was required to sit down without finishing. Previously, she may not have ever been able to get the rest of her message across, or never may have been able to discuss the issues that she felt were important in what she was trying to say during the session in the chambers. However, because of the way that social media is today, as soon as the session was out, she was able to complete her statements and finish reading the letter over Facebook Live. And this ended up actually garnering 4.5 million views by the next morning. So this really helped her get the message that she wanted out there and really helped her get her point across, regardless of being shut down earlier that day. So looking at these obstructions and this tool, there are a couple rules that I would give a candidate were she running for campaign and I were her campaign manager. So the first rule would be to highlight stereotypical traits while revising perceived trait weaknesses. This is something that Fridkin and Kenney discuss often as a tactic that female politicians can use. They state that female politicians can highlight compassion and advocacy while also highlighting agentic traits such as competence and experience to try and balance out this gender stereotype. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf actually employed this tactic while she was running for office, and she ended up highlighting her female traits of motherhood and embracing things like that, while also highlighting her competence and experience in politics. And this ended up really working well for her in her campaign, and really working well for her in her entire process. So the second rule would be to use social media to your own advantage. So really use it to disseminate your preferred messages and to highlight your preferred issues. This will not negate all of the attention to appearance or maybe the lack of attention to the issues that you're wanting from the mainstream media or from reporters or journalists, but it will definitely give the candidate a much better chance of getting her preferred messages and her preferred issues out there to the constituents than any other way, really. So overall, women's representation in politics really is controlled by the media in a lot of ways. However, these factors can be negated to a certain extent. There are ways that women in politics can try to take back the narrative and control their self-representation, such as using their social media to control the messages that they would like to put out there. So it's really important for women who are running for political office to keep all of this in mind when they're doing so. Some of the works that I cited in this presentation are Fridkin and Kenney's The Changing Face of Representation, Rainbow Murray's Cracking the Highest Glass Ceiling, Kelly Dittmar's Watching Election 2016 Through a Gendered Lens, the film Misrepresentation, and Washington Post articles by Amy Wang, Paul Kane, and Ed O'Keefe. A full works cited will be in the description as well. Thank you.